The barn doors rattled against the rising wind, groaning like some old creature trying to warn of what was coming. Lantern light swayed in uneven circles across the hay-strewn floor, catching the sharp edge of Alara Vane's face. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper, heavier, older. "Will you shoot me, rancher?" she asked. Marcellus Crane didn't move at first. His hand rested on the revolver at his side, fingers brushing the worn grip as if testing its weight against the silence. The barn seemed to hold its breath. Outside, thunder rolled across the prairie, but in here, only her words mattered. He narrowed his eyes. "You don't know what you're asking." But Alara did. She always knew how to dig under his skin, to drag ghosts back from the places he buried them. Her gaze was steady, almost daring him, as if she wanted the bullet, wanted the end, or maybe just wanted to see if he had the courage to pull the trigger. The lantern flickered. Dust swirled, and for a moment, the barn felt more like a courtroom than a shelter. Marcellus stepped closer, boots crunching against dry straw. The revolver hung heavy at his hip, the air between them thick with words unsaid. He had faced storms, cattle rustlers, even men who drew first in the saloon. None of them shook him like this woman standing before him. "Alara," he muttered, "you're not the kind who asks questions you don't already know the answer to. So why now?" Her lips curved. Not quite a smile, more like a shadow of one. "Because I need to hear it from you. I need to know if you're the kind of man who kills the truth or lets it live." His pulse throbbed in his temple. What truth was she clawing at? The one the town whispered about? The one buried under 3 feet of prairie dirt out past the orchard? The storm outside cracked lightning across the plains, spilling light into the barn for a heartbeat. In that flash, Marcella saw her eyes glisten, not just with challenge, but with grief. "Alara," he said slowly, "what are you hoping for? Mercy? Justice? Or something worse?" She took a step forward, boots brushing the hay. Her hands hung loose at her sides, open, defenseless. "I'm hoping," she whispered, "that you'll finally admit what you've done. And if you can't, then end it here." The words struck him harder than any bullet. She wasn't bluffing. She wasn't begging. She was demanding a verdict. And Marcellus Crane, rancher of Lone Cedar, knew there was no walking away from this night without blood, whether it spilled from his heart or hers. The lantern flame hissed, threatening to die. His hand twitched over the revolver, and in the half-dark, Alara's shadow leaned toward him like a noose tightening. "Choose, rancher," she breathed. The barn waited. The storm waited. Even the ghosts of the past seemed to wait. And in that silence, Marcellus felt the weight of more than just a gun. He felt the weight of everything he'd tried to bury, clawing its way back to the surface. What he said next would either shatter her or shake the entire barn to silence. Marcellus Crane's jaw tightened, as if his bones themselves were grinding against memory. The barn wasn't just filled with hay and dust. It was thick with the ghosts of choices he had tried to forget. Alara's eyes, sharp as broken glass, forced him to stare into them all at once. "You think I don't know?" she whispered, stepping closer. The thunder outside echoed her words. "You think the town forgot? Or that I did?" Marcellus swallowed, throat dry as cotton. He remembered another storm years ago, one that hadn't rattled the barn doors, but rattled his very soul. A gunshot in the night. A body dropped near the orchard. The way bloodstains never truly wash out of wood. "Alara," he said, his voice rough, "I did what I had to. A man has to protect his land. His family." Her lips curled bitterly. "Family? Is that what you call it? My brother didn't walk onto this ranch to steal Marcellus. He came to warn you." The words ripped through him like barbed wire. He had spent years convincing himself of another story, one easier to sleep with. That Alara's brother Jonas had been trespassing, threatening, pushing him into a corner. But in Alara's tone, every layer of that story peeled back, leaving the raw wound exposed. The storm lashed harder against the roof, but inside the barn the only storm that mattered was the one boiling between them. Alara's voice softened, though it carried more danger than any scream. "He begged you, didn't he?" she said. "Begged you not to side with the Whitfields. Begged you not to sell out the ranchers to them. And when he wouldn't keep quiet, you silenced him. Marcellus's chest tightened. The Whitfields, wealthy land barons who'd been buying up half the county, still held the town in their grip. He remembered their offer, their money, their threats. He remembered the moment he chose survival over loyalty. His knuckles whitened on the revolver grip. It wasn't that simple. It never is, Alara shot back. But you made it simple when you pulled that trigger. Her voice cracked then, just slightly, betraying the storm inside her. For a fleeting instant, Marcellus saw not just the accusing woman before him, but the younger sister who had buried her brother with trembling hands. Alara, his voice softened, surprising even himself. I carry it every day. His face, his scream, the look in your eyes that night. You think I've forgotten? No, it eats at me like rust. But I can't undo it. Her jaw clenched. She wanted to hate him. I needed to hate him. But the way his words trembled made it harder to hold that hatred steady. Then why? She asked, stepping closer still. Did you let everyone else believe he was nothing more than a thief? Why let his name rot in the dirt while you stood tall, as some hero of lone cedar? The question split him open. He had no answer that would save him. Only the truth, that he was too weak to face the town's judgment, too afraid to lose everything. The wind howled, rattling the rafters. The lantern sputtered low. And for a moment, both of them stood on the edge of something far more dangerous than violence. Truth. Alara, Marcellus whispered, almost pleading, you don't know what it cost me. She tilted her head, eyes shimmering like steel wet with rain. And you don't know what it cost me. I lost my brother, my only blood. And every time I walk past this barn, I hear the echo of that shot. The silence that followed was suffocating. The kind of silence that pressed on your lungs until breathing hurt. And in that silence, the truth finally took form between them, jagged and sharp. One had pulled the trigger, and the other had been living with its echo ever since. But the night was far from done. Old wounds weren't just bleeding. They were dragging others into the barn with them. By morning, the storm had washed the streets of Lone Cedar, but the air carried more weight than rain could ever rinse away. The town wasn't blind. It never had been. Folks whispered over black coffee at the diner, lingered too long outside the general store, traded looks in church pews when Alara walked in. Sheriff Calderoe leaned against the post outside his office, pipe clamped between his teeth. He'd been circling this truth for years, never quite landing on it, but never letting it go either. Calder was a man of patience. He didn't chase storms. He waited for them to roll in on their own. He had watched Marcellus Crane grow older, quieter, but never truly at peace. He had watched Alara Vane leave town only to return again and again, each time carrying more fire in her eyes. And he knew, though he couldn't prove, that something foul rooted itself out past the orchard. Still, Sheriff Rowe wasn't the only one watching. Nora Whitfield, widow of the very family that had bought and bullied their way through the county, sat on her porch with her knitting needles, pretending not to notice the way people walked slower when they passed her gate. Her husband's grave was fresh, her inheritance vast, and her tongue sharper than both. She had always said Alara was trouble. That kind of girl didn't belong in a town like Lone Cedar. Wandering spirit, eyes too curious, heart too loud. But secretly, Nora admired her, because Alara asked the questions that others buried under gossip. And when word spread that Alara had been seen at the Crane Ranch in the dead of night, when thunder cracked and lanterns burned late in the barn, Nora's needles paused. Rumors had a way of weaving themselves into something stronger than truth. Even Jonas Drell, a ranch hand who kept mostly to himself, felt the change in the air. He was young when it happened, but not so young that he didn't hear the shot that night. He never said what he saw. He kept it buried for a wage and a roof. But guilt gnawed, and watching Alara's face every time she crossed the ranch yard twisted his gut tighter. Jonas knew more than anyone realized. And in a town like Lone Cedar, silence was both shield and curse. The whispers grew louder after the storm. In the saloon, men leaned closer over whiskey glasses, lowering their voices but never their curiosity. "You hear she asked him straight out?" one muttered. "In the barn, with a gun right there?" Another shook his head. If Crane had any sense, He put her on the first wagon out of town. That girl's gonna ruin him. But none of them knew Alara Vane. She didn't leave when the truth clawed at her. She stayed. She dug. And the more she dug, the more the town's shadows shifted, uneasy, like snakes disturbed under a stone. Sheriff Rowe spat into the dirt and narrowed his eyes toward the ranch. He knew the barn held more than livestock and hay. He knew the storm had brought more than rain. And he also knew this. When truth scratches at a town's door long enough, eventually someone opens it. The question was, would it be Marcellus Crane confessing or Alara Vane tearing the door off its hinges? Either way, Lone Cedar braced itself, because shadows, once stirred, rarely settle back quiet. The barn smelled of old hay and rusted iron when Alara returned the following night. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the weight of everything left unsaid. Marcellus was waiting, lantern lit, revolver holstered, eyes dark with exhaustion. "You came back," he muttered, though his tone carried no surprise. "You knew I would." Her voice was steady, though her heart trembled like reins pulled too tight. He studied her in silence. She wasn't just here for vengeance anymore. He could see it in her eyes. She was here for something heavier, something only he could give. "Alara," he began slowly, "if you dig too deep, you won't find justice. You'll only find ruin, for you, for me, for the whole damn town." She stepped closer, lantern glow painting her face gold and shadow in equal measure. "Ruin is already here, Marcellus. It's in the silence, in the lies. I'm not asking to ruin you. I'm asking you to tell me the truth." He swallowed, throat aching. "The truth won't bring your brother back." "No," she said, eyes glistening, "but it'll keep him from dying twice." Marcellus sank onto a wooden crate, rubbing his hands together as if trying to warm them against the cold creeping up from inside. For years he had carried this secret like a brand seared into his skin. To speak it aloud meant more than confession. It meant letting go of the last threads of the man he thought he was. "The Whitfields," he finally whispered. "They came to me with money, promises, threats. Said if I didn't side with them, they'd take everything, burn me out if they had to. Your brother, he warned me, told me to stand against them, said the town would follow if I led." He looked up at her then, eyes hollow. "But I didn't believe him. I saw only fire and ash waiting if I refused. So when he pushed, when he wouldn't stop shouting, Alara's breath caught. She already knew the ending, but hearing it spill from his lips sliced her open all over again. "You chose yourself," she said softly. Marcellus nodded, shame bowing his head. "I pulled the trigger, and when he fell, I swore I'd never let anyone know the truth. Not even you." The barn walls seemed to lean closer, pressing the confession into the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Alara's hands trembled at her sides, torn between striking him and collapsing. "You let the whole town spit on his name," she said. "You let them call him a thief. You let me bury him with nothing but questions. I thought I was protecting you," he said, the words desperate, weak. Her laugh was hollow. "Protecting me? Or protecting yourself?" The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. At last, Alara drew a long breath. "Then give me what I came for. Clear his name. Tell the truth, publicly, in front of everyone." Marcellus's eyes darted toward the barn door, toward the town that waited just beyond the fields. "You're asking me to hang myself. I'm asking you to pay what you owe," she snapped. The lantern hissed, shadows writhing along the beams. Marcellus leaned back, staring up at the roof as though searching for courage among the rafters. He had bargained his soul once, years ago, with the Whitfields. Bargained it for land, for peace, for a life built on silence. Now Alara Vane stood before him, demanding a new bargain. His pride for her brother's truth, his reputation for her healing. And for the first time, he wondered if surrendering was the only way forward. But bargains never come cheap, and in Lone Cedar, debts always came due. The sun sank behind the ridge, painting the fields in bruised colors. In the barn, the lantern's glow carved two figures out of the dark. Alara, standing tall, Marcellus hunched low, the weight of confession pressing into his shoulders. The air was thick with the scent of hay and the memory of gunpowder. "You know what you have to do," Alara said, her voice steadier now, tempered like steel and flame. Marcellus stared at the revolver on the crate beside him. Its metal gleamed faintly, a reminder of the night it had sealed both their fates. He reached for it, fingers brushing the grip, and for a long moment Alara thought he meant to end it all right there. But instead he lifted the weapon slowly, holding it between them like a truth made solid. "This gun," he said, voice cracking, "has taken more from me than it ever gave. And still, it asks for more." Alara's breath caught. Every nerve in her body screamed to move, to stop him, but she didn't. She wanted to see where his soul would take him. Marcellus's hands trembled as he leveled the barrel, not at her chest, but at his own reflection in the lantern glass. His eyes met hers over the sight line. "Do you want to pay with my blood? Would that give you peace?" The barn fell silent, the storm long gone, but its echo lingering in their bones. Alara's heart thudded painfully. She shook her head slowly. "If you die, the truth dies with you. And I won't let that happen. I don't want your blood, Marcellus. I want her voice." Her words pierced deeper than any bullet. His arm dropped, the revolver shaking in his grip. He lowered it to his side, but didn't holster it. The barn doors creaked then. Sheriff Calder Rowe stepped into the glow, hat low, eyes sharp. He had heard enough. "Funny thing about secrets," Calder said, voice calm but edged with iron. "They don't stay buried forever, especially not in Lone Cedar." Marcellus stiffened. Alara turned, startled, but Calder's gaze didn't waver. He had given them space until now. But the law had a way of showing up at the exact moment it was least welcome. So Calder continued, "You ready to say it out loud, Crane? Or do I drag it out of you myself?" For a moment, Marcellus looked between them, the woman demanding justice and the lawman demanding order. His breath came ragged, his heart pounding in his chest like hooves on dry earth. He thought of Jonas Drell, still silent. He thought of Nora Whitfield, watching from her porch with her sharpened tongue. He thought of the town, its whispers swelling like a tide. Finally, he looked back at Alara. "You'll have it," he said, voice hoarse but certain. "Tomorrow, in front of everyone." Her eyes glistened, not with victory, but with something closer to release. But even as those words left his mouth, Marcellus knew a new danger had been born. The Whitfields would not let him stand before the town and tear down the lie that had protected them for years. He had chosen his side, and it wasn't theirs. The revolver felt heavier than ever in his hand. The night had not ended. The real storm was just about to break. And Alara Vane could only wonder, would Marcellus Crane truly stand, or would someone else pull the trigger first? Morning broke over Lone Cedar with a fragile calm, the kind that never lasts. The townsfolk gathered outside the courthouse, whispers coiling through the air like smoke. They had heard, somehow they always did, that Marcellus Crane was going to speak. Alara stood near the steps, her cloak drawn tight. Her chest ached with every breath, but she didn't falter. She had dragged this truth into daylight, and now it was here, waiting to burn. When Marcellus emerged from the crowd, the murmurs rippled louder. He walked stiffly, as though every step cost him more than the one before. Sheriff Calder shadowed close behind, eyes sweeping the crowd. Somewhere among the faces, Nora Whitfield sat tall in her carriage, expression sharp enough to cut glass. Marcellus reached the steps, turned to face them all. His hand brushed the revolver at his side, but this time he left it holstered. His weapon would be words. "I've carried a lie," he began, voice low but carrying. "Carried it long enough that it nearly buried me alive. And it buried the truth of a good man with it." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some leaned forward. Others scowled, already fearing what might come next. "Alara's brother," Marcellus said, the name trembling on his lips, "was no thief. He came to warn me, to warn all of you." And his throat caught. He closed his eyes, forcing the words out. "I shot him. I silenced him. And I let you believe he was nothing." The gasp tore through the square like a sudden wind. Nora Whitfield stood then, her voice slicing across the murmurs. "Lies! You'd ruin yourself just to ruin us? Don't listen to him. He's a broken man clinging to guilt. Marcellus lifted his hand, shaking but resolute. I don't care if you believe me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to know the truth. His blood's on my hands, not on his name. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy, the kind of silence that presses down before the world shifts. Then came the crack. A gunshot split the morning. The crowd screamed, scattering. Alara's heart lurched as she spun, searching. Marcellus staggered, clutching his side, blood spreading across his shirt. Sheriff Calder drew instantly, eyes darting toward the rooftops where a shadow darted out of sight. The Whitfields had answered. Marcellus fell to his knees, eyes glassy but locked on Alara. She dropped beside him, hands pressing uselessly against the wound. You spoke it, she whispered, tears streaking her face. That's enough. That's enough. His lips curved in the faintest smile. He deserved better. His breath rattled. You deserved better. And then his body sagged. Heavy, the life slipping from him with one final exhale. The barn was silent now, though they were far from its walls. Silent not with peace, but with the echo of everything that had led to this. The truth had been spoken, a name restored, but the cost was written in blood across the courthouse steps. As Sheriff Calder barked orders and townsfolk murmured in shock, Alara rose slowly. Her brother's ghost no longer cried out in her ears, but another ghost had just been born. She looked at the townspeople, at their wide eyes, at Nora Whitfield's pale face, and she knew this wasn't the end. Lone Cedar would never be the same. The silence after the shot was only the beginning of a new reckoning.